Hello everybody, welcome to the channel or welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm going to show you how to set up the Canon EOS R10 for bird photography by going through all the buttons, all the dials, the menu, the quick menu. We'll spend a lot of time on the autofocus system. I want to make sure you understand what subject tracking is versus subject recognition. What are the autofocus points versus autofocus areas versus eye detect. It's quite a complicated system. We're going to get it all squared away here. And then we'll answer the question, can you actually use this for bird photography? Let's go find out. All right, guys, in the first part of the video, as always, let's do a semi-factory reset so we're all on the same page. Of course, you don't have to do this, especially if you just got it out of the box, because that's where we're taking you. But it's up to you. So here we go. We'll introduce the menu system here. So this is the menu system. You push this little button that says menu, and now we're into the menu system. It has icons across the top. Those are the main menu items. Each one of these main menu items, like the big camera here, it has a row of sub-menus that are in the form of numbers. Under each number, there are a bunch of sub-menus. Those are the actual menu items that you can set. All right, so let's do our semi-factory reset. And before I forget, let's make sure that we're all in the mode dial right here. So turn this dial at the top. This is called the mode dial. Make sure you're in manual because that's how we're going to set this up. I only recommend shooting in manual. Maybe a little harder to learn, but you'll thank me in the end if you learn how to adjust the exposure triangle all by yourself. All right, so set that to M. Let's get into the menu now, and let's go to the little camera here, or the orange menu, number 5. And this is a touch screen, by the way. You can tap on it, or you can use this little cross keypad here. Some call it the D-pad or directional pad. It's officially called the cross keypad. Let's go to number 5 and hit clear all custom functions. You can just tap on it like that and click OK. Or you could push the set button here and that does the same thing. Now let's go to number 3 down here, and there's a clear custom settings button. Let's hit that. Delete. Click OK. And we got that one done. Now let's go to the wrench and let's go to number 5, and it says reset camera. Let's go into that menu. Basic settings, let's go into that menu. When I say let's go into that menu, I mean hit the set button or tap on it. That gets into the menu. Click OK. Hit the set button or the Q button. Great. Let's go back to the wrench, back to number 5. We're not done here. Reset camera. Now let's go to other settings. Some of these we got to get rid of. Flash, I don't mess with that. Quick controls, you can reset that if you want. Shooting display, I didn't mess with that. Communications, no. Customized, no. Copyright, don't mess with that. There's no sense of changing that. Customized controls again, yes. And custom functions, yes. My menu, we didn't mess with that, but just to be safe. All right, we're all on the same page now. Let's go to the next section of this video, which is how to set up these buttons and dials. What do they do? How do we change them? Here we go. All right, guys, before I dive in any further, I'm going to make one modification because this is going to power off like that, and that's going to be annoying. So I'm going to go to menu, and let's go to the wrench. I think it's number 3. There it is, number 2, power savings. I recommend turning all these off. I never, ever shoot with these on when I'm birding, because you never know when the bird of your life is going to pop up, and if this thing is asleep or shut off, it'll take 1001, maybe 1002 for it to turn on. Then you have to focus, the bird's going to be gone. So I never leave these on. There we go. Now it's not going to black out on us. Okay, let's go through these settings now. So let's go to front, to top, to back. So the very first button we have, and I'm not going to move the cameras to show you this, but we have a DOF button, a depth of field preview button. And there's also a switch on it, around it, where you can toggle between autofocus or manual focus. Very, very handy. Stock out of the box, when you push it down, it'll show you the true depth of field in your viewfinder or in your LCD screen. When you look through your viewfinder or look at your LCD screen here, this camera lies to you stock out of the box. It shows you the shallowest depth of field that your lens has to offer. So if you have a 2.8 aperture lens, which gives you a nice blurry background, a very shallow depth of field, this is the view you'll always see. If you go up to f/22, it shows you the same view. But if you push that button, it will show you the true depth of field, right? So we're at f5.6 now. If I take this up to f/22, let's say we have 5 rows of ducks sitting in a pond, and I want to get all the rows of the ducks. We want a very deep depth of field. But you can see now, if I focus on Mr. Bill here, you can see the background is still blurry. It's not telling you the truth. If I push the DOF button, see how everything is in focus now? So that's the story with that button. There's a setting in the menu system that will allow us to always make this thing tell you the truth with regard to depth of field. So we're going to do that, and we're going to modify that button to do something else. But that's what it does stock out of the box. I'll do all the modifications in one section. All right, guys, that's it for the front of the camera. Moving to the top, we have a shutter button here. So when you half press the shutter button down, it locks on whatever autofocus system you have set up. If you have tracking and recognition, it'll lock that on. Whatever autofocus point you have set up, it'll lock that on here. Stock out of the box, we have the entire screen as the autofocus point or the autofocus box. I'll explain this more when we get there. And of course, by going into the Q menu, you can modify the different autofocus points right here. And for our demonstration, let's use this one. It's called Span It AF Around. And this will be a nice one to demonstrate. So when I half press, and there's a brown owl right there, if I half press, see how it turns green and locks on the target? Now when I full press the shutter down, it takes the picture. How many pictures does it take per press of my finger? Well, that depends what the drive mode is. And we'll look at the drive mode more in a minute. But the drive mode used to be right here, but it's now gone on this menu. This is the first of all of the Canon EOS Rs that does not have the drive mode set here by default, which is very strange to me because you're always manipulating that. But I'll show you how to get that back. But the question was, how many pictures does it take when I full press? Stock out of the box, 1 picture. But if I change the drive mode, I can take up to 23 pictures per second per push of this button. So we'll come back to that more when we get into the menu, because you can't go out birding taking 1 picture at a time like that. You just can't. You're going to miss some very incredible moments if you shoot like that. So we want to be shooting at least at 15 frames per second. All right, moving back, we have, let's skip that little button right now. Let's go to this. This is the main dial. This controls your shutter speed. So you can let more light in by turning it to the right. You can let less light in. When I mean what do I mean by light in? I mean light hitting the sensor. More light hits the sensor, the brighter the picture is. The less light that hits the sensor, the darker the picture is. So that's what this does. We're not going to mess with that. Okay, now this is a very important button here. This is the MFN button, or the multifunction button. Stock out of the box, when we push it down, a submenu pops up. And right out of the bat, we have ISO right here. And that's very handy. And let's push it again because it does time out. Now if I turn my main dial, we can control my ISO. And that's a pretty handy way to control your ISO. But I'm used to having this button toggle between the autofocus points. ISO will be set up here on the quick control dial in a little bit. But that's what it does. So half press, now you're on ISO. If you push this multiple times, you can see the other submenus here. When the first version of this firmware came out, you were set up here by stock, right here to auto white balance, which is a ridiculous setting. But nevertheless, whatever you set it to, if you come back to it, it remembers. So if you're not going to mess with these buttons and dials much, make sure you're on ISO so you can control your ISO here easily. Okay, we have a record button. People don't understand this. When I push this down, it immediately starts recording, and the settings cannot be modified. It just records. There's a place in this camera, I'm not even sure where the settings are to modify this, like emergency record button. But you can't do anything with it. If I try to change the shutter speed, nothing happens. If I try to go in and change the ISO, nothing happens. It's an emergency recording button. I don't use it like that. All right, moving back, we have a lock button here. You can easily accidentally hit this thing and wonder why you can't change your aperture here. See how it says lock right here? You can still change your shutter speed. So it's a little weird. It's unfortunate. Usually you can modify this button to make it do something useful or turn it off. You can't modify this button, so watch out for that. We have the mode dial we talked about already. You're going to be shooting in manual, but there are other options. You can shoot in aperture priority, shutter priority, things like that. I'm not going to get into those. I recommend always shooting in manual. Learn how to adjust the exposure triangle yourself. Okay, moving back, so we have a dial right here. This is called the quick control dial, and as you can see by default, it changes your f number or your aperture. So your f number and aperture for birders, it's always going to be very close to wide open. It's kind of set it and forget it. So this is a waste of a really valuable ergonomically positioned dial here. So we're going to modify this to change ISO right here when the time comes. But that's what it does stock out of the box. There is a camera on and off button right here, or switch. If you push it to on, it comes on in maybe 2-3 seconds. Not too bad. That's all there is to say about that. The next question is, where's the record button? We're used to the record on-off switch being here or over here. It's actually up here. So if you want to go to recordings or movie mode, you have to put it in the little camera. And now here we are. And I'm not going to go into movie recording, but you can choose your mode right here. And yeah, we're going to just worry about stills in this video. Okay, great. So we got that covered. Now let's go to the back side of the camera and see what we got. Thank goodness. Thank you, Canon. They gave us the joystick back. You got to have a joystick. It's just so annoying. The EOS R8 didn't have one. You had to set up the cross keypad to do that. But that's what it does. It moves the autofocus point around. So we can see me moving this thing around here. Also, if you push it straight in, it snaps the autofocus point back to the center. See, there's a little dot in the center of the autofocus box here, autofocus point. That means it's right in the center. So super handy. Thank you, Canon, for not taking that away. AF on button is pretty crippled, pretty limited in this camera. If you push it, it does the same thing that half pressing the shutter button does. It meters, which we don't care about because we're shooting in manual, but it starts the autofocus system up. Okay, same thing here. See how it turns green? But that's all it does. Normally you can set this to do different things, but not in this camera. You could set this up for a single back button focus, and that's it. You can't do double or you can't do triple in this. But that's what it does. Really nothing, but I'll show you how to set this up to make it do something in a little while. Going this way, we have the star button. If you push that in, as always, it's another way to control your aperture. See how the little half cog popped up here? And now we're controlling aperture like that. Great. The rectangle button, this is called the autofocus point select button. I call it the rectangle button. It's super, super important. It does all kinds of things. We'll talk about it more when we modify. But let's see what it does stock out of the box. If I push it, it tells you some of the things it does right here. So it says MFN button. If I push the MFN button, then I can change the autofocus points. So that's pretty cool. So let's show you how to do that. Let's push it. Okay, I have to push the MFN button. And now a menu comes up and I can use the main dial to scroll between the autofocus points. So that's pretty cool, and that's the best way to change these. This is probably the third most commonly changed setting when I go out birding. I'm constantly changing between these things. Okay, what else does it do? Let's push it again. Well, it says hit the info button, and now you have a magnifying glass. Let's try it. Hit the info button, and yeah, So now I have just created this is now like a pair of binoculars. You could look for birds and look and zoom in and stuff like that. I do use that when I'm out running around. Okay, let's see what else it does. So here it doesn't, that just means if you hit that, it takes you out of that mode. So, but it does do another thing. I'm going to, let's show you right now. So we haven't talked about the autofocus areas yet, aka autofocus zones, aka autofocus points, aka autofocus methods, aka autofocus areas. Did I say that? I just call them autofocus points or autofocus boxes. What are those? Well, it's these things. These are the autofocus areas, as the official name, or autofocus points. So you see these guys right here, 1, 2, and 3? They're adjustable. We can adjust the dimensions of this box. How do you do that? Well, you hit this rectangle button, and then you hit the MFN button, and now you choose, let's say this one's useless for us. Let's modify number 2, and you quickly hit the rectangle button again, and now we can take our time. We have 2 new assignments have occurred. So the main dial controls the width of the box, and the quick control dial controls the height of the box. So let's see how that works. Let's make this box wider, and let's make it a little bit shorter as well. How cool is that? I wish so much this was in the R5, but it's not. It's only here. Click OK, and there we go. So we can see these boxes. There's box 1, box 2, and box 3. So, very powerful button as usual. Okay, next we have a info button here. So if you hit the info button, it just toggles between different looks on your screen. Pretty much all there is to that one. So I won't get into all these, but usually I'm on this one right here. When it's really bright outside, this is not the greatest quality screen in the world. So it's nice to have the histogram here to make sure you're not blowing out your target too bad. So once I have it locked in, I usually get rid of all that stuff. Okay, that's the story with that button. Let's go to this playhead button here. So if you take a picture, let's take one picture, and you hit the playhead button, it pulls up that picture. So that's pretty cool. You can drag it around, and you can blow it up by hitting this rectangle button. See the little magnifying glass here? If I hit that, it blows it up. You want to blow it up even more? Let's look at Gumby. Now, the half dial or the half cog right there, that's your that's your main dial. So we can do that to blow it up, and we can see Gumby was kind of blurry. We don't like that image. There used to be a little garbage can here. It's not here anymore, but you can hit this button to erase it, or you could have hit this little garbage button right here. Let's erase the next one like this. We can hit the garbage can erase. It's very handy, right? When I'm out at the bald eagle nest, I usually let this run for about a half hour. If nothing in video, I just let the video run for a half hour, which takes up tons of space. If nothing happened, I just erase it. I go boom, and it pulls up the last video you shot or the last picture, and I erase it. So very handy. So now we have a little weirdness on this cross keypad. We have an ISO button at the top cross key, or the north cross key, or the up cross key. So good idea. Good, at least thinking. We have some other settings here. So here's the drive mode is over here. So they got rid of this out of the quick control menu and put it here. I mean, good thinking again. We'll get into this when the time comes. Then we have the flash mode over here. Here's the problem with this, guys. It's a tiny camera. This is my shooting position. The pad of my palm here, your Thenar pad that's called, it's right over the top of it. And look how easy, when I squeeze this camera, especially if I'm holding a long lens, when I squeeze it, I accidentally hit and mess up the ISO. So unfortunately, we're going to have to turn all this stuff off except for the quick control button in the center. So okay, that about does it. Of course, we have the menu button. That's where we're headed next. The LCD screen I should talk about. So we do have the exposure triangle right here. So if we tap on here, this is another way to control shutter speed. Hit this little 90-degree arrow, or what is that? I don't know, what do you call that? Little bent arrow, and you pop back or it times out. We can control aperture right here, and this is ultimately how I control aperture on this camera. because I said we don't do that very much in birding. Set it and forget it, and we can also control ISO right there. So, but you don't want to do that, right? You always want to keep your eye in the viewfinder. So you have to use your thumb to control the exposure triangle without taking your eye out. The minute you take your eye out of that viewfinder, you know something great's going to happen. You're going to miss it. All right, guys, let's get into the menu here. So just hit the menu button. Hey, we're in the menu. Let's go to the big camera. We already explained the menu. 3 tiers. We got icons on the top, main menus. Numbers are sub-menus. And these sentences are sub-menus. Let's start right at the beginning. Let's go to big camera number 1. Stock out of the box, the image quality. Let's see what that's set to. It is set to a large JPEG. So if you spend $1,000 on a camera, you're probably not going to want to shoot JPEGs. But if you do, that's what it shoots. That's fine. When you shoot a JPEG, the camera will process the picture for you. It's like having little Ant-Man inside the camera, and he's running Lightroom or Photoshop and processing the images for you. He can't do as good a job as you can do, but he does an okay job. I never shoot, unless I go to like a family function and I don't want to process images, then I'm going to shoot highest quality JPEG. You can manipulate that little Lightroom. You can also shoot down here one that you can just email and text to people. So that's the story with that. I turn that off. So RAW versus C-RAW. I always shoot in C-RAW unless the sun hasn't come up or it's dark and the sun has went down. So there's no difference between these two. You don't lose any pixel quality except in low light. That's the only difference. And I very rarely use it. And there's a huge advantage. The file size is half, almost half in C-RAW. So this camera has a tiny, tiny little buffer. Worse than the R7, worse than the R8. It's horrible. So you have to shoot in C-RAW. That'll spare the buffer a little bit. We'll do a demo on how short this buffer is. I mean, you can't really shoot at 20. They say you can shoot at 23 frames per second. You really can't. The buffer is just too small. So C-RAW, JPEG off, click OK. Great. Dual pixel, I don't mess with that. You can't load those into Lightroom. You have to use the Canon software, and it's just horrible software. I just don't mess with it. It just slows things down way too much. Number 2, we don't really need to talk about anything except when we get to big camera 7, but this is big camera 2. I'll just go through it with my eyes and let you see it. There's nothing there. Metering mode, so that doesn't really matter because we're shooting in full manual, but you always want to be in evaluative anyway. And there's videos on that. Some people use a spot, but just leave that stock. White balance, you can leave that stock. Canon does a really good job with auto white balance. I often, though, tend to go to Kelvin setting of 5400. That's what I tend to shoot, like this video shot at 5400. I like it a little colder than normal, but you're fine to leave that alone. It doesn't really matter. Color space, if you want a little wider color gamut, go to Adobe RGB. That'll give you a few more colors on the palette. Picture style, I prefer standard, just so all the pictures are about the same. Great. Let's go to big camera 5. Nothing to worry about. Big camera 6. We're not going to do burst mode with this. We're not going to do focus bracketing. I just don't mess with those things. Big camera 7. So this is the one you should memorize because stock out of the box, this is where the mode brothers live. There's the drive mode and there's the shutter mode, and this is the only place you can manipulate those. So let's talk about those very important things. Before we do that, though, let's get rid of this annoyance. Release shutter without card. This means you can take a picture and it'll make the sound like you're taking a picture, but if you forgot to put an SD card in, you will have no picture. It won't capture it. So, I mean, I think everybody who makes YouTube videos has been harping for years about this. Why don't they default this to off so you don't have an accident? I have had an accident, and I went out shooting for a couple hours. I forgot to put an SD card in, and I had nothing. So very annoying. But let's talk about the mode brothers now. So we have the shutter mode and the drive mode. Let's talk about the drive mode first. Let's check it out and see what it looks like. So the drive mode is how many shots this camera will take when you push and hold your finger down. Okay, by default we said it takes one shot per press and hold, but you can't go birding like that. And you can see I already changed it here. Right, so there's where we are stock out of the box. So I always recommend that you shoot in either high-speed continuous plus, the H plus mode. That's the fastest this camera can shoot. So in electronic, it's 23 frames per second. In mechanical and electronic first curtain, it's 15 frames per second, which is really good. That's what I shoot in. If you drop down to high-speed continuous without the little plus sign or just the H mode, the electronic drops down to 15 frames per second. The electronic first curtain drops down to 7.7, about 8 frames per second. And the mechanical drops down to about 6 frames. I think it's 6.3 frames per second. If you go to low speed continuous, you're shooting 3 frames per second. And that's well, that was not it. I was going to say that's pretty fast. If you go into low speed here, click OK. Here's what 3 frames per second. It's not enough, guys, for bird photography. The bird takes off and the wings are going to be all blurred and you're not going to catch things. You got to shoot faster than that. So that's the drive mode. Bottom line, I want to set this at high speed continuous the fastest because I shoot in electronic first curtain, and that'll give you 15 frames per second. And it does okay with the buffer. I think you'll be fine like that. All right, great. So now let's go back, big camera 7. Now let's talk about the shutter mode. So there's 3 different ways that you create the exposure. The sensor is exposed to a time period of light, and that makes the picture. And there's different ways to start and stop light from hitting that sensor. So mechanical is the classic way where there's 2 shutter blades, or they're called curtains, a front curtain and a back curtain, and you start like this, open. When you push the button, the first curtain drops down to blacken the screen. The computer starts the picture, and then it has to lift up. There's a delay between this, and that's one of the problems of mechanical shutter. That's why I don't use it. And the other problem is it goes up fast and bangs and causes a shutter shock, especially at low speeds. So your images may not be quite as sharp as you like. But that's how mechanical works. Electronic works with the front and the back curtain. Oh, I didn't finish the mechanical story. So mechanical, now you're exposing the shutter, or now you're exposing the sensor. My glasses are the sensor. And now to end the picture, the second curtain, or the back curtain, flies up and slams and blackens the screen. So that's how mechanical works. So bring the shutter down, picture starts, slam it up, things shake, and the back curtain comes up to end the picture. The one I use is electronic first curtain. With electronic first curtain, you don't use this front curtain at all. Remember, this is the one, there's a lag time, and then there's that banging that can cause shutter shock. We don't use it. We just leave it up like that. The picture is started by the sensor saying start, so there's no delay. The picture is ended by the back curtain, or the second curtain, coming up like that. And there is no problem with that because we are mechanically ending the exposure. Right? The light's coming in, we mechanically end the exposure. We're not turning off the sensor, which is where the rolling shutter comes. So I hope I explained that right. That's always hard to explain. But that's the bottom line. So bottom line to all that talk is we always use electronic first curtain, period. The only drawback to that, it's loud. So if there's a lot of photographers around, they might get annoyed. You might be forced to go into electronic mode. Then you're going to want to change the drive mode to high speed continuous. That'll give you 15 frames per second. Let's see what the buffer's like on that. Ready? That's it. So that's enough. I mean, you can feather it and it goes further. I mean, that's enough to work okay. You're going to get some rolling shutter, but it won't be terrible. So that's a fake shutter noise. I'll show you how to control that in a minute. While we're here, let's put it in high speed continuous. And let's go to my preferred mode. electronic first curtain. Let's see what the buffer's like. Ready, set, go. It's got a couple little afterbursts, so that's about it. So, I mean, the buffer is about half the size of the EOS R, so you have to be very careful. That's one of the limitations, big limitation with this camera. All right, guys, so after all that talk, bottom line, electronic first curtain, high-speed continuous plus, you're shooting at 15 frames per second. All right, let's move on. Number 8. So nothing we need to do here. Image stabilizer mode. So you want to turn this off if you're shooting video. We're not going to do video, but this has no in-body stabilization, so it's electronic. That's one of the downfalls of this camera. So your lens has to have stabilization. Most lenses have, the RF lenses all have stabilization, all the big bird lenses do. So it's nice to have it on with your lens and on in the camera to help with those long lenses so you don't get some shake going on in there. Okay, customize quick control. So we have to fix this. So let's show you the Q button here. Did I go over that? I don't think I did. So if you hit this Q button, it brings up a abbreviated menu system, and it's got key settings in here. But for birding, we only really need this one up here. There's your autofocus points, and that's it. I mean, I use one shot sometimes, but you're probably not going to, when you're first starting out, you're probably not going to worry about that. So we need to get rid of all this junk. There's no reason to have all this junk here. So let's get rid of it, and let's bring back our drive mode, for goodness sakes. So where do you do that? We are on Big Camera 8, where it says Customize Quick Controls. Let's go in there, Edit Layout. Let's hit the Set button to go into that. It thinks for a minute. There we go. So let's start unchecking things. You want to be able to toggle between the autofocus points. Great. We don't care about that one. Don't care about that. Don't care about that. So I'm just pushing the Set button to uncheck them, because none of this stuff matters to birders. But what does matter is we want that drive mode back, and so there it is right there. Now these are not checked, and of course you can do what you want to do, but there's our drive mode, so now we got our drive mode back. So if we exit, save, and exit, now if we hit our Q button, now we have just these two settings in here. Okay, so pretty cool. And you can make these farther apart if you want, but I think that's fine. And this gets you, this arrow, curved arrow, gets you out of that mode. You can also get into the quick menu by hitting the little Q right there. All right, guys, so that's a modification there. Touch shutters disabled. If we enable this, there might be times when you want to take a picture by going like that. If you tap, oops, it's displaying that, tap, takes a picture. It's also auto displaying the picture, which we'll get rid of that here in a second. But that can be really annoying. That's in Big Camera 8. We need to get rid of that. Image review is what we're on right now. So I don't want to take a picture. I don't want that picture to block my view. So for goodness sakes, let's turn this off. So now it won't pop up. If I want to see that picture, I just hit the playhead button. If I want it bigger, we hit the rectangle button. If I want it bigger, I use the main dial. We've talked about that already. Great. All right, nothing we need. We don't need to worry about high speed. Display simulation. Remember I said that the viewfinder doesn't show you the true depth of field. We can fix that right here by just tapping that up, exposure and depth of field. And now your viewfinder won't lie to you. And we can free up that depth of field button on the front to do something else. So we fixed that. The next thing, display performance. So if you're following and shooting a bird as it flies, you'll notice it stutters. You get these black frames between the actual real frames, and it'll look like you're not on target. So really annoying. And you want to go to smooth. This is an important setting here. So go to smooth, click OK. Great. Nothing else we need to do there. Number 10. This you can't control your ISO shutter speed here, but you can control what type of movie file size. So this Big Camera 10 matches the emergency take the movie button right here. So you can set that to whatever you want. These settings will apply to the emergency button only. All right, autofocus area. Let's come back to that and do a dedicated section on that. Let's just get rid of this other stuff first. So let's go to the playhead button. We'll save that autofocus because we're going to make some modifications to that. Nothing we really need to change here in playhead or blue menu 1. Number 2, nothing we need to worry about here. Number 3, nothing. Number 4, nothing here. You can change your magnification. Right now it's 2 times. You can, when you hit the playhead button and then hit the rectangle button to blow it up, you can make it jump way up to 10, which I usually do because I just want to see the eye if the eye is sharp. So it's not super important. Now there's a couple settings here. So we have the highlight alerts. Those are the blinkies. A lot of people like those on. The viewfinder will blink when you're blown out on an area. I don't like those. I can tell when I'm blown out, so I leave those off. Some people like them though. But autofocus point display is really important. That should be on by default. So if I hit enable, this is handy. So if I take a picture and I want to know where was my autofocus point or my autofocus area, was I on target or was I off in the bushes? When I hit the play button, it shows me where my autofocus point or autofocus points were. And it wasn't very accurate, but I did get the brown owl there. So that's very handy to have on. Great. I don't think there's anything else here we need to worry about. We're not going to worry about connectivity at all in this section. The wrench. So before I start every session, I go and format my card. So hit the Q button, click OK, card is format. Now I just erased everything on this card, which is fine. But that's really important. You want to start out, you can change your language, your time here, and stuff like that. Number 2, this is important. This will drive you crazy. This mode guide, it'll flash up these comments as you go through the menu, and they're just annoying. They're not very good. More annoying than anything else. So always disable that. Now the beep, so this is the fake shutter sound. So you want beep enabled, because when I was in electronic, like in the R5 and the R6, when you shot in the shutter mode electronic, it was quiet. There was nothing. You couldn't have an audible sound to judge when you're going to hit the buffer. So they gave us a fake shutter sound as long as the beep is on, and then we can control the volume right here of the fake shutter sound. And you can see if I go into the shutter volume, and I don't have the greatest hearing, but I go down to 1, and that's plenty for me. So you might drop that down to 1. So now when I shoot, now we have to go into the electronic shutter, right? Okay, here's a quiz. Where was that? Remember that number, big camera 7, lucky number 7. So if I go into electronic mode, now I'll have a fake shutter sound there. So that's very nice. All right, power savings, turn everything off. I mean, if you leave it on, it'll save you a little bit of battery life. The battery life is okay. It's these LP17s, they work much better. The EOS R8, I literally went through one battery like every hour and 15 minutes. I'll go through a battery about every 2.5 hours with this camera. So it does much better with these little batteries. So I recommend turning all those off. Number 3, the screen brightness. You can brighten that up if you want to 5. If it's a sunny day, sometimes I do that, but I'm kind of okay with this. Same with the viewfinder. You can brighten that up by switching to manual and go up to 4, but I'm okay with it for this video. Number 4, wrench number 4. Nothing much to talk about here. Wrench number 5, that's where we were to reset the camera. There's battery information. We can see how our battery's doing. Let's check it out. Yeah, it's hanging in there okay. And copyright, this is where you set your copyright information up. Great, firmware is 1.1.0. Okay, little camera, let's go through these settings. So there's only one that we need to do right here. Same exposure for new aperture. So if you do mess with the F number for whatever reason, you can have the camera automatically adjust the other members of the exposure triangle by making the settings. So this is quite handy. I always do that there. That's the only bit of automation that I use, and I very rarely adjust the aperture anyway. But if you change lenses and the lens have a different aperture, it'll fix this as well. So it's a handy setting. Number 3, we customize buttons and dials. We're going to be coming to that. Number 4, nothing. Number 5, nothing. Favorites menu. While you're smart on this, because maybe you won't go out birding again for a while, it's probably best to put the Mode Brothers here. So let's show you how to do that. Let's go Add, click OK. Oops. Configure. Let's select items to register. Let's just go find the Mode Brothers. They're down here somewhere. And you can add whatever you want to this menu. There's drive mode. Let's put that on there. Just click OK. Great. And now, while we're here, let's find the shutter mode. There's the shutter mode. Great. So now when we go back to here, we have the drive mode and the shutter mode. So if you forget, was it Big Camera 7? Where were they? They'll always be on your favorites. And you can add like a format in here I usually put, but okay, great. All right, guys, that does it for the menu, but we saved the most important for last. Let's go over the autofocus system now. So here we go. Let's go to AF for autofocus. Let's go to number 1, and let's set this up. By default, the AF operation is one shot. What does that mean? That means that if you lock onto a target and half press the shutter button and move, the focus will be locked in position. So if this bird is flying or moving and you're in this mode, it's not going to be in focus as it moves out of that focal plane, right? It locks. It is handy for some situations, but most of the time you don't want to be in this. So let's get out of that. So AF operation, we go to servo. Now if I lock on to that brown owl right there and it moves back, it will refocus. If it takes off flying and I keep on it, I keep half pressing or full pressing and shooting, it will focus as the bird moves away or flies away, or if the bird's flying toward you, it refocuses, refocuses, refocuses. So you almost always want to stay in that mode. Okay, servo. Autofocus area, those are just the autofocus points. Let's go through these. So we have this one. This is the smallest autofocus point. It's called the spot autofocus. And these are all boxes. A lot of times I just call them autofocus boxes. They're not really points, but every one of them is a box. So they're called autofocus areas. They used to be called autofocus methods. I know it drives you crazy, but so I'll call them autofocus boxes or points is what I usually call them. But this is the smallest little box. Let's check it out. And there it is. Let's put it over there. And that's on the brown owl. See the little box there? And what happens normally is when you half press, the Canon will look inside the box for sharpness and detail. But I have tracking turned on. I have subject tracking turned on. So it may start looking inside the box, but the computer has permission to go outside of the box the way this is set up stock out of the box, like it's doing right there. Okay, but anyway, that's the smallest one. Let's see what another autofocus point or autofocus box looks like. Let's go back in, but let's look at this. So this is one point or single point autofocus. It's just an autofocus box, but it's a bigger box this time. See how much bigger it is? And by using the joystick, we can control where the box is. Let's put it up there in the black so we can see it. Again, when I half press the shutter now, it'll look inside the box. If it doesn't see a bird, we have this set up for birding right now, it'll go outside the box and look. It doesn't do very good in this camera, but nevertheless, that's because we have tracking set on. As a matter of fact, let's turn that off so you can understand this better. So if we go to subject tracking and jump ahead and I turn that off, now watch what happens. So when I half press to lock on the box, you're in control now. If we go down here and get Gumby, we can get a picture of Gumby. All right, let's pull that up. There's Gumby. Let's blow it up by hitting the rectangle button. We can blow it up even more. Nope, because I set it to 10, remember? But yeah, we got a pretty good picture of Gumby like that. Right? But see how it's not going outside of the box, and that's the way we're going to leave this for now. And that's, I mean, there's pluses to it. That's called tracking. It tracks outside the box. There's pluses to that and minuses to that. Okay, let's look at another box, but let's look at another place. Where else do these boxes live? Well, let's go to the Q menu, and there they are right up there, that little AF icon. There's the boxes again. And so you can tap on, let's check out this expanded AF area and see what that one looks like. Okay, this one has helper boxes. So it's just a single point autofocus box as usual, but it's got 4 helper boxes around the outside. So how does that work? If the main box can't find fur or feathers or something that looks like an animal, and animals are cats, dogs, birds, and horses. If it can't find those, it asks these 4 helper boxes, hey guys, does anybody see fur or feathers? Because I don't see anything. And if one of these boxes is like hanging out on, oops, if it's like barely touching an owl here, so that box on the right would say, hey, I see fur, let's go with this. Or I guess it's a furry owl. But it will use one of those boxes if it can. It doesn't show on these autofocus point select, won't show it. But if we blow that up, it's going to be sharp. See how sharp that is? So it used that little satellite box, right? So the next one, if we go in the Q menu, the next one's the same, autofocus or expanded autofocus area around. It's the same, only it's got more helper boxes. So it's got, what, 6 of them? 2, 4, 6. It's got 8 helper boxes around it. That's the same thing. If the main box doesn't see anything, it's going to ask the helper boxes. See how that works? Remember how to jump that back to the center? Push the joystick. It's called the multi-controller, but everybody calls it the joystick. Push that straight in. All right, what else we got? Now we got these zones. We talked about these a little, right? These are flexible zones because we can modify them. But let's see what happens here. So now the Canon will look inside the box just like before. I really don't like the joystick. I'm used to the joystick being right there, so you really have to stretch for this. But now the Canon will look inside for a bird. It doesn't look for an eye, but it looks for a bird or a face of a bird, then the head of a bird or a body. And we got that little barn owl pretty good right there, right? So we nailed it. We can see the autofocus points hit it. If we blow it up, it's going to look very sharp. You can see the nice feather detail there. Great. Let's say, and this is how I set this up, let's start doing some modifications on that first box. And here's a quiz. Where's a third place to pull up these autofocus points? Remember the rectangle button. If you hit the rectangle button, then it says hit the MFN button. There's the autofocus points again. So these 3 autofocus boxes are all adjustable. They're called flexible zones. So you can adjust those. And I'll show you how I like these. So let's adjust this. So once it's selected, let's hit that rectangle button again, and it brings up these tools right here. So I like this one a little bit more narrow, but I do like them to be more rectangle-like. But I want this to be a little bit bigger than a single autofocus point, so that's bigger, and that will work right there. So let's set that one. So let's go to number 2 now. Okay, let's make that one even a tiny bit bigger. So to make that bigger, all we have to do is hit the rectangle button, hit the MFN button, Oops. Hit the rectangle button, hit the MFN button, choose number 2, and then quickly hit the rectangle button again, and now we can modify. We can use the main dial to control the length, and we can use the quick control dial to control the height. And let's make this one a little bit bigger and longer. Great, there we go. Okay, so now there's our first box. We made it nice and small, and this is bigger. And let's make our third box even bigger. So let's modify it. How do you do it? Great. Hit the rectangle button. Oh wait, we're back at the center here. Hit the rectangle button, MFN button, select number 3, quickly hit the rectangle button, and now you got time to modify this. Let's make this really big. There we go. Great. So let's check them out again. So now we can see them. So there's number 1 is small, number 2 is bigger, number 3 is bigger. How do we snap this back to the center? Push the multi-controller or the joystick straight in. When you see that dot, you're right in the center. All right, great. We made some modifications. Let's go back to the menu now. And we just talked about tracking. So for our modifications, we're going to leave tracking off. Because, let's turn it on again and show you what, you remember what happened if we turn this on? And we're not even on birds, right? We're on people. Let me jump ahead and put that to animals so it'll track better. So now, let's grab an autofocus point here. Let's grab just a single autofocus box. So now, see it's in white? That means it's working. The computer will actually look in there. It's not showing you any suggestions. But can you see on the barn owl how there's a little gray box? Those are called tracking boxes or suggestion boxes. The Canon's telling you, hey, I found not only a bird, but I found the bird's eye. So you want to go this way. If I half press over here, sometimes it jumps right over and sometimes it doesn't. In the other cameras it does, but you're going to have to get closer for it to jump. But now, see, it's not going inside the box. The autofocus is not, it's looking in there, but it sees the eye. And because I'm close enough, it's actually jumping over to the eye. Get on the eye. Well, it's on the face. It was on the eye a second ago. See, this is it's not quite as good as the R7 and the R8s in the EOS R6 Mark II. But it does the same thing. And if we bring that up, we can see that we hit there, even though the autofocus box was out. So bottom line here, let's review. With subject tracking on, it has permission to go outside of the perimeters of these autofocus boxes. And sometimes this is great, and sometimes you don't want this to happen because it may be grabbing sticks of a tree or eucalyptus tree branches. So actually, I'm going to start with turning this off. And therefore, we're going to have real autofocus boxes. So now, if I put the box over here in kind of no man's land, it can't find anything to focus, but it's not going outside of that box. Okay, I'm the boss. I'm in control of where that thing focuses. If I want to get Mr. Bill, got Mr. Bill's head. All right, great. Let's go back into here. All right, so now subject to detect, by default, you're on people. You absolutely can't forget this. You have to set it to animals. Animals are birds, cats, dogs, and horses. And the computer scientists have trained this or programmed this to look for those things. If you leave it in animals and go shoot people, it'll still find people okay. It's not as catastrophic, but if you go shoot birds with people on, that direction doesn't work. The crossover doesn't carry, and it will be a disaster. Keeper rate will be like 10%. So for goodness sakes, put this to animals. Eye detection, let's leave this on. We'll explain that more. Well, it just detects an eye if it can find an eye. If you're in an area far away from birds and there's no way it can find the eye, you want to turn that thing off. Switching track subjects. So this is how sticky you want the autofocus box to be on the target. If the target takes off flying, do you want the autofocus to stay on the bird? Of course you do. So you can make it stickier. And so if we go into this switching track subjects, I like to set it over here on 0. So it's a little more sticky on the initial subject that you half pressed and locked onto. Okay. Now let's go to menu 2. These are cases. So cases are interesting. We're going to talk a lot right now about that, but the bottom line is set it in auto. I've experimented with every different permutation of these, and I keep coming back to auto. It works really good. I don't care what they say, oh, it takes a split second for the computer to think. It does a really, really good job with fast-moving birds, eagles flying into nests out of the blue. It works really good. So now each one of these 4 cases are nothing more than different permutations of 2 settings. Tracking sensitivity, which is another stickiness setting, and acceleration, deacceleration, tracking. That's a little different. So if we go up here to number 1, they're both set to 0, so this one really does nothing. It does nothing. There's no modifications at all. If we go to number 2, we can see that the tracking sensitivity was dropped down to -1. If we go in there, we can look. And so in case number 2, it's even more sticky than we've already made it. I like to say there's 2 degrees of stickiness now. So it'll stick on that initial bird that you locked onto. And sometimes I like this setting, but it doesn't seem to work as good as just the auto does. If we look at number 3, let's see what they've done with number 3. So now we have tracking sensitivity to +1. So we're back to a slightly less sticky autofocus point. So it might be more prone to jump onto a branch. If you're following a bird goes behind a branch, you might jump onto the branch a little bit more. Acceleration, deacceleration, though, this tells the autofocus system to be ready for unpredictable movement. So you could use this setting for a cheetah chasing a gazelle or a swallow, which you never know. They don't fly in a straight line. They zig and zag and come into the plane of the page, out of the plane of the page. So this is telling the computer, hey, get ready for sudden changes in movement. Number 4. So this one is just medium stickiness, but it's set up to detect more erratic movement. So that's the story. The one that I played around with, I modified this case 2, and I went into the tracking sensitivity. I actually made it even more sticky. Sometimes that one works good for an eagle, where you can lock onto the eagle against blue sky, and he's flying into his nest, which is in a eucalyptus tree. Really, really hard. Lots of fake eyes looking at you. And it does pretty good of locking onto him there. So that's one you could play with. So you can modify these to your heart's desire. But bottom line, I like auto. All right, number 3. Nothing we need. Everything is fine. Oh, this AF beam firing, turn that off. There's like a little red laser beam shoots out of this thing in low light. Might disturb the animals. It doesn't do anything with regard to improving your focus, I have found. So just turn that off. So limit autofocus methods. Let's get rid of some of these. So we certainly don't need all these autofocus methods. I guess they're calling them autofocus areas now, or autofocus points, or autofocus boxes, whatever you want to call them. We don't need all of these. It's nice to have the spot focus, but if you're going to have a single autofocus point, you might as well have all the helper boxes around it. So I get rid of these 2. I don't need these. And I keep 2 of the zones. I don't need the 3rd zone. And you definitely want this 4th one. We didn't talk about that, did we? Let's go look at that one right now. I don't think we got to it. So let's go back to the autofocus points. So this one I use all the time. Make sure that's checked. And now, whoops, did I not check it? Let's go do it again. Nope. Okay. So now, where's the autofocus box? Let's get rid of all that stuff. Where's the autofocus box? The entire screen is the autofocus box. You're shooting swallows. You're shooting birds, eagles even. I leave this one set because I need this whole frame to be the autofocus box. So this is very handy. So that's what that one was. So we don't want to limit that. So back to the limiting. So we got rid of the single autofocus point. The 4 helper boxes with single point, we got rid of those. We got rid of one zone. And this is what I usually keep mine set to. Great. And now when we go look at the autofocus menu, you can see that they're grayed out. And it's easier to toggle between these. Great. Battery's about dead. So we've been shooting, what, I can look, over an hour. And this is starting to go. And I've had this on before, and I was shooting with it last night. So let's change the battery while we're sitting here. How do you change the battery? You should turn it off, of course, but pop it out. Put a new one in. Simple as that. It's like they skimped on this camera's door, like kind of flops open and not spring-loaded anymore, which is kind of weird. By the way, while we're talking about cards, you should use these faster cards. So these are Lexers I like. They have even a faster one, a 300 megabit read and write speed. This is 250. These are pretty affordable, but you want to get a card that has the double row of pins on the back. So, and their prices come way down in these things. All right, so we talked about that. We limited our autofocus points. So I do shoot, sometimes the autofocus system just doesn't work and you have to go to manual settings. So by default, all your manual tools are off. So we want to turn on your peaking. I'll show you what that is here. Levels high, colors red, and we want to turn on the focus guide. These are like these little sticks. Great. And so now let's turn off and put our lens into manual. Oh, this is a great example. So this is a cheap little Nifty 50 and RF 50 lens. You can't switch. It doesn't have a switch between manual and autofocus. But now, I don't know if you'll be able to see this or not, but there is a switch right here. So I can switch this over to manual focus without going into the menu. There's a menu setting for that. Now you can see when I half press the shutter, nothing happens. So now we're all up to this ring right here. So let's try to zero in on the bar now. So by turning this ring here on the lens, watch what happens to the color. See how it starts to get red and the eyes are red? So I am locked on right there. When I'm perfectly locked on, anything inside that focus box, that's perfect focus. So if I take a picture, it'll be quite sharp if we blow it up. Can't really see the eyes that well, but yeah, it's pretty sharp. So that's what manual is about. See how Gumby is out of focus? But if I turn, watch, we can make Gumby turn red. See Gumby's hair is turning red? So that means we're pretty close. I can also tap, put that box over him to even fine-tune it more. There we go. Let's get the box over him a little more. Of course, you can use the joystick because your eye should be in the viewfinder. Let's see what that looks like. Hit the rectangle button to blow it up. I might have went too far, made this too big. Well, I can use my wheel to kind of calm that down. We were on Pokey, right? Not good. Did I say Gumby? We're on Pokey. Yeah, pretty sharp. So that's the story with that. Let's turn this back to autofocus now, though. Okay. Great. Let's go see where we are. All right, movie servo, don't worry about it. And we don't have to change any settings here. Great. All right, guys, that is the autofocus settings in the menu. Now let's go make some modification. This is the fun part. So let's go modify some buttons here. So let's go right front to top to back again. So the DOF button, let's change that. And so let's make that switch on eye detect. That's what I like that one to do. So for all of these, we're going to go to little camera, number 3, customize buttons. And now we have a fake little cartoon camera, and see the glowing orange? Whatever that's on, whatever's glowing, that's the button you're going to want to modify. So let's go find that button in the front, that depth of field preview button. There it is. And make sure you're in the left column under camera. These are still settings. If you want to modify, when you're in movie mode, you have to modify different settings for those. We're just worrying about stills right now. So let's go in there. And if you mess something up, the icon, the original icon setting is always in the top left corner. So we can come back to this. So let's just set this to turn on and off eye detection. Always forget which one it's on. I think it's this little simple eye here. Click OK. And now when I push the MFN button in, eye detection on, eye detection off. Okay, really as simple as that. So if we go to a different autofocus point, let's see if we can demonstrate that. Let's go to this one right here. Spot autofocus. Let's put it like on his nose. Let's see if it'll find his eye. Oh, that's because all right, we're going to have to turn, to show you this example, we need to go turn this back on. Sorry about this. Let's go to autofocus, number 1. Let's put tracking on because the eye and the tracking go together. Okay, now we have it on. See how it jumps on his eye now? When I half press the shutter down? I want to shoot his nose, but I half press, it goes outside the perimeter of the box, right on there. Now if I turn eye detection off, see how it doesn't work anymore. It finds his face. So that's what eye detection, it gives you more precise movement. So let's push the DOF button, eye detection on, bam, right on his eye. Super, super sharp picture there on the eye. Great. All right, next let's go to the MFN, the multifunction button here, and set that up. It's a very well ergonomically positioned button, so it's prime, it's just ripe to be set up for something. Right now, if I push it, it pulls up an ISO menu, which is okay, but I never have ISO set there. I'm used to the R5 and R6 where ISO is right here on the quick control dial. So that's where I'm headed. But I'd like to have my autofocus points toggle right here. Unfortunately, there's no direct autofocus toggle button like there is on all the other cameras, the R, the R5, the R6, the R7, the R8, the EOS R6 Mark II. You can all set it up to push this button one time and it switches to the next autofocus point. So it's a direct toggle. The best we can do is take this rectangle button and put another one right here. And that way, if I double press that, I can immediately be in the autofocus menu. So let me show you how that works. So let's go into little camera number 3. Let's go find the MFN button. There it is, multifunction button. Let's go into it. And let's put this right here, AF point selection button there. I know it's right there as well, but we can put 2 of them up there. Okay, so now when I'm in my shooting position and I want to change autofocus points, I hit this twice, and now the main dial will toggle between the autofocus points I have set up. So that's the way I set mine up. The record button we'll leave alone. You can't do anything. The lock button. Next, let's go change this dial. Right now this dial controls aperture, and aperture we never change. It's always wide open or maybe one stop down. So it's a waste. So let's set ISO up on that button or on that dial, this quick control dial. So customize dials, see it there? Customize dials, and let's go find it. And that wasn't hard. There it is right there. So let's go into it and let's set it up for ISO, clicking set. So now it's set to ISO. You can set it to other things too if you wanted, but I always set mine to ISO. Click set, okay. And now when I manipulate this, you can see the ISO is changing right there. Got it? Great. So exposure triangle is set. So we have the shutter speed here in the main dial. We didn't modify that at all. We have the ISO controlled by the quick control dial here. And aperture, we said if you push the star button in and hold it, you can control aperture or your F number right there. Remember, F number is the aperture number. Now, what else can we do? So now I have a problem. I don't have any spot focus. All of my focus boxes, the Canon system goes outside of those boxes and disobeys my wishes. I want to shoot inside that box. I want Canon to focus only inside that box. And with subject tracking on, that's not happening. So let's go fix that. The only way on this camera, and it's unlike all the other cameras. All the other cameras, I let subject tracking run wild here. I have recognition and subject tracking on. But I can't do it with this because I won't be able, there's no way to set up a dedicated spot autofocus without that tracking on because they don't give you that option. So we have to do it backwards. So let's go back to the menu, go to autofocus, subject tracking, and subject, and these two go together, right? Did I explain these? Subject tracking, it's called different things in different cameras, but this is the best description because it's subject tracking. Once you detect the subject, so you have subject detection here set to animals, once the camera's computer finds an animal and you lock onto it, now you're going to stay locked onto it. Whether you half press the shutter button or not, it'll lock onto it. So these two go together. But I can't have subject tracking on by default here. We need to turn it off. But I'll turn it on in a different way here in a second. But now I have a real, like an old school, like the R5 and R6 and the EOS R, where these autofocus boxes, you will stay inside of them. See, I'm looking inside these boxes. Let's get Mr. Bill there. We've left out Mr. Bill. When I get Mr. Bill, I got him. And we're not tracking. The Canon is not allowed to look outside the perimeter of that box. So that's the way we have to have this set up, at least the outer portion of this set up. But there will be a situation where I want to track, like a bird in flight. There's no way you can keep this on a bird in flight, right? I don't think anybody's that good. You're going to miss it. If that bird is flying and I'm trying to keep it locked and I go out like this, I'm going to focus on the background and the bird is going to be out of focus. So in this scenario, I want the tracking to go outside of the box to help me. And that's what that subject tracking is all about. If I can't keep locked on the bird and I miss, it will stay locked on for me because it's allowed to go outside the box. All right. So the only way to do this, well, there's two ways to do it. Let's set up our favorite button here, the AF on button. Let's set this up to engage tracking. And you can do that by engaging eye detect. Because if you engage eye detect, the tracking is automatically turned on as well. So watch this. Let's go in here. Let's go back to little camera number, or little camera, what was that? Little camera, customize buttons. And let's go find that AF on button. There we go. Let's go into it. Now it's set to AF on, so it'll meter and turn on the autofocus system. But normally there's a register button or an info button here where you can assign things for this to do. But here on this camera, you don't have it. And I guess that's why this is a cheaper camera. They cut out that function. So this is really useless for us. So what can we do with it? Well, we can turn this on. We can start and stop tracking. But we can go a step further. We can actually use this one. This eye detection autofocus will also set on tracking. But it'll go a step further. It'll turn on eye detection and tracking. So let's set that one up and watch what happens. So nothing's happening. Now when I push and hold the AF on button, and let's pretend that owl is moving around. See how it's locked right on the owl's eye. it's not perfect. See, it's jumping around a bit. So I have to repress it. It's not perfect, but it does work. So that's one way to engage tracking. And I mean, my shooting position, I can just push down my thumb like that and hit that so easily with a bird in flight. Okay, and even if I'm using that for a bird in flight, if I push that down, see how it just disappears? It's tracking everything. So that's a way to turn on eye tracking and subject tracking at the same time. We can set up, if we want to set up the star button, we can do something different with that. Let's go into that and find the star button. There it is right there. Let's go into that. And we can set that one up to do this. Let's just start and stop tracking. Okay, so now if I hit the star button, it's tracking. If I half press, tracking. Notice the eye detection is not on. Even if I hit eye detection on here, oh, it is kind of working a little bit. If I turned on eye and that DOF button, yeah, but yeah. So those are two ways to engage tracking. All right, and that's how I have this set up, guys. Now you're saying, well, how are you going to control your aperture? Remember, that's kind of a set it and forget it thing. You can just turn it on and manipulate it here if you want. That's what I do usually. I'm still kind of playing around with this thing. But that's how I'll set my aperture. And so I have my AF on button. So I have to hold it down though, but that'll engage your tracking and your eye detection with one push of the button. Works fine with birds in flight. And if that one doesn't work, I hit the star button and I don't have to hold that down. But notice, see, it's tracking the owl, but watch, if the owl goes out of the frame, it's lost. You have to repress it. Okay, but that works pretty good. I think you'll be happy with that. All right, guys, the next thing we need to do, because I accidentally hit this cross keypad all the time, we need to turn these off. So that's real easy. Let's go turn those off so you don't have an accident. Buttons, let's go find it. There it is. So go into that, go down. That's the north cross key, hit off, and they'll all go off now. Will they? Or I guess they won't. I guess I have to turn them off separately. I thought they would all go off, but no. So we do need to turn those off separately. But I mean, it takes a second. We can leave the Q. The Q can be okay there. All right, let me make sure I got them all off. There's the 6 o'clock one. There's the 3 o'clock one. 9 o'clock cross key, 12 o'clock. Yep, we're all off. Okay, great. Now if I hit this, nothing happens. All right, guys, that'll do it for the video. If you have any questions, leave them down below. I'll get them answered. I'm pretty good with these Canon cameras now. I've done this exact same setup, even more detailed for the R5, the R6, the R7, the R8, and now the R10. And I just got the EOS R6 Mark II. I'm loving that camera. There'll be a setup review coming on that. That's a great birding camera. Autofocus is top of the line. But now to answer the question, can you use this for bird photography? You absolutely can. I've gotten some really good pictures with this. It is 24 megapixels. I mean, it's not 32 megapixels like the R7, but it's an APS-C centered camera. So if you put a 500 millimeter lens on there, it's like shooting with an 800 millimeter lens. A 400 millimeter lens goes to 640, so you got that benefit. And remember, with APS-C sensors, the pixel density is greater. The pixels are more crammed in to the sensor. The pixels are smaller though, so the image quality may not be quite as good as a full frame camera. I don't see a heck of a lot of difference between it myself. But yeah, this is a good little camera. It's a good beginner camera. The autofocus system and the tracking is better than that of the R5. So, I mean, this is a great camera to start out with. And it takes lenses. I've had EF lenses on here, 300 by 300 prime with teleconverters. It works fine. I have no complaints about it. It doesn't overheat. Remember, I set the EOS R8 back because of the 5Bs. It had buttons in the wrong place. It had a button right here, so when you squeezed it hard in this trough, you accidentally hit the AF on button. That's not a problem anymore. The buffer is still small, so that's still a problem, but the buttons aren't a problem anymore. The burns, it doesn't overheat. It has not overheated one time on me, so I don't have any trouble with that. The battery life is way better compared to the EOS R8, which takes these same type of batteries. So a good little camera. I mean, I wish it had in-body stabilization. It does not have IBIS. That's kind of a bummer. And I wish they would have allowed us to modify that AF on button more. There's no registry recall functions in here. So you can't really shoot up dual back button focusing. You can set up a single back button focus on this thing by turning off the autofocus start and just letting it start like this, but you can't modify this to do anything else. So that's kind of a bummer. I really miss the direct autofocus point select button. They could have left that in there, but they didn't. But I mean, now we just double hit that and we're right at that autofocus point menu. So it's not so bad. So yeah, all in all, it's a great camera for what? It's about $850 for the body. I think I flashed that up already. If I didn't, I'll flash that up. So yeah, it's definitely a great entry-level camera, and I would recommend it for entry-level camera. If you have money, I would spend money on lenses and buy this first. Maybe you can get a 100-500 RF lens and not buy a R5 or R6 Mark II. Buy this instead, and then always get the glass first, right? All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. And please consider subscribing. Give me a thumbs up. A lot of hard work goes into these videos. Really appreciate that subscription and the thumbs up. See you in the next video.